Empedocles implores us, sift these words through the guts of your being. Learn first the four roots of all, that is, Zeus, a white flickering, life-breathing Hera, Aidoneus unseen, and Nestis, whose tears form mortality's pool, uncreated. And I will tell you this, there is no self-nature in anything mortal, nor any finality in death's deconstruction. There is only the merging, change, and exchange of things that have merged, and their self-nature is only a matter of words. The elements combine and merge, form human, beast, bush, or bird, emerging into brilliant air. But originate is only a word, and when the elements unsift themselves, we speak of death and sad fate. Language not in accordance with nature, merely a convention, but useful as such, and so. But only fools incapable of connected thought believe that unbeing can come into being, or that anything that is can pass into nothingness. Impossible transition from isn't to is, and for it to be obliterated is wholly absurd. It will always be there, where it is, fixed forever. No part of the whole is empty or full. The elements, equal in time and space, but of different valence and character, predominate in turn. In the turning of time, nothing besides comes into being or ends, and their destruction would be the end of all being. What would there be, then, to fill up the whole, and where would it come from? Where would they go if destroyed, since nothing is empty of them? No, they are all that there is, in their interpenetration becoming different things at different times, but always themselves a continuum forever. Love, tenacious love. The human body, with its structure of limbs, is emblematic of just this process, all its proper parts brought together through love to form one sweet corpus in the flower of youth, then torn apart by discordant forces, beaten to pieces in the hard surf of life. So too with trees and shrubs, fish in the black water, wild things on the mountainside, and gulls that skim the water on wings. The pale gold sun, earth, sea, and sky are all in harmony with their severed parts, parts that form the bodies of mortal beings. Things that have a propensity to blend fall in love for this reason, and are assimilated each to the other through Aphrodite's power, but things that differ from each other most in origin, composition, and modelled form are not disposed to combine. This hostility due to the dictates of hate, who caused their becoming. That was a reading from the Fragments of Empedocles, the pre-Socratic philosopher who bequeathed to posterity the notion of the four elements, which would come to form the basis of both Western astrology and alchemy. The entire Western esoteric current is colored by these four elements which Empedocles calls roots and which Peter Kingsley notes are essentially divinities. We already heard this from Empedocles at the beginning of the reading, because in mentioning the roots, Empedocles says, learn first the four roots of all. That is, Zeus, a white flickering, life-breathing Hera, Adonais, and Nestus. And on these four divinities, Kingsley comments, we would seem to have the double marriage structure embedded in the first known formulation of the traditional four-element theory, at the very origin of an idea which was to prove extraordinarily fertile and enduring in the subsequent history of Western culture. So, as I mentioned, the four elements theory would set the paradigm for Western alchemy and astrology. And the interesting thing about the figure of Empedocles is, what is at the basis of such a theory? What we have, as I understand it, is basically a pairing of, how can I say it? Like an overworld marriage and an underworld marriage. It's like a double marriage. And if you think of like a circle with like a cross in the middle with like four two pairs of opposites, or two marriages, we have Zeus and Hera of the Greek pantheon, the sky god Zeus and Hera, and the conjunction there is between air and basically air, or the heavenly component, and earth. Hera being associated with the earth, Zeus associated with the sky, and then we have this other like really interesting motif, which Kingsley devotes like really the entire his entire book, entitled Ancient Philosophy, Mystery and Magic, Empedocles in the Pythagorean Tradition. This entire book is devoted to elucidating this argument, and the argument is that we have also an underworld, or an underworld marriage, basically, which is the marriage of Hades and Persephone, which is associated with the some of the Greek mysteries, for example, the Eleusinian mysteries and other mystery cults in ancient Greece, which were associated with the cult of Kore, or Persephone, who was the daughter of Demeter, who was sort of whisked away into the underworld at the end of summer. It's kind of an interesting time I'm recording this video, as we transition into late summer and autumn. You know, part of the ancient Greek understanding there was that Persephone, basically like Demeter, Persephone's mother, was weeping because a bargain had been struck, and Persephone was to spend 6 months of the year in the underworld with Hades. And this was autumn and winter. And the weeping of Demeter was the cause of autumn and winter. And then when Persephone would return, this was the joy of spring and the radiance of summer. Something I've recorded a video on previously, actually, but this mythology, this sort of mythic cycle, was very important to the ancient Greeks. Of course, you can see the resonances there with an agricultural society, a society that depends on the fertility of the earth, and the significance of the waning of the power of the sun and the renewal of life in spring. Anyway, so this story had, or at least the figures of Hades and Persephone are associated with those rites. I don't know exactly where I'm going with this video because it's something I'm still thinking through myself. It's quite an interesting mystery, and it's something that, as I've noted, Kingsley has gone to some pains to sort of draw out. But what the suggestion is that at the basis of the four elements, we have Hades associated with fire, the lord of the underworld, married to Persephone associated with water. And this is an underworld marriage. And the fire and the water elements are in conjunction in a union. And then that's one conjunction. And the other conjunction is Zeus and Hera in the overworld. I'm kind of using the overworld as like the opposite of the underworld, but we have basically two like marriages of powerful divinities, and we have what's the name? Hierogamies. I think that's the name. Hierogamies means like a sacred union, a sacred marriage, or a marriage of the gods. So we have basically two hierogamies at the basis of the four elements theory. All of this is interestingly connected to the fact that for Kingsley, Empedocles himself was connected to a primordial shamanic tradition. Indeed, many of the pre-Socratics were in the dark places of wisdom. One of Kingsley's other books, the figure of Parmenides, who gives us ontology, for example, the study of being, is examined in great depth. And so we have Parmenides and Empedocles, and Kingsley is asking the question, who were these people who so greatly and so profoundly influenced the whole course of Western culture, development, and history? And his contention is that these people were shamans in some sense. And what a shaman is a person who travels into the underworld. So there's this connection between fire and water, the hierogamy of the underworld. The association, for example, in Empedocles' case, with the volcanic landscape of Sicily and Etna, and the idea that the fires, that there are underground rivers of fire which spew out in Etna, And there's a story about Empedocles that he threw himself into Etna and so achieved immortality. So I don't know, I might just sort of end the video somewhat abruptly, but because I mean these are things that I'm continuing to explore, continuing to think about. But it's perhaps just sufficient to say that the four element theory has fascinating roots. Like, it has really fascinating roots. And these roots are drawn out in Kingsley's book and are really just there in the fragments that we do have from Empedocles himself. All this relates to my interest in Carl Jung, who Kingsley sees as an inheritor of this shamanic tradition in the line of Empedocles and Parmenides. The investigation of dreams is the investigation of an underground world, an underworld. Our dream life, our shadows, our imaginings, the unconscious is what Jung called it, is a vast world to which the modern person is gradually awakening or may have forgotten in a deep sense. And it's important to remember that this world exists and to come into contact with it, to explore it, and to really reckon with it. And that's no easy or simple feat, I suppose. And it's not exactly like a simple thing. Like, Jung's confrontation with the unconscious was the nucleus and the seed of his entire life work, but it also basically killed him in a sense. So it's takes courage to encounter this reality anew. This is all connected to some of the ideas that Anne Baring, someone who I've interviewed on this channel a few times, has talked about in her work. She calls it lunar consciousness, which was sort of surpassed by solar consciousness. The lunar consciousness being a kind of original participation in reality, and solar consciousness being a kind of emphasis on what is conscious and what is at the surface of things, associated with patriarchal cultures. And so Anne's analysis has to do with the idea that we've lost touch with this lunar consciousness, this shamanic way of knowing. And Kingsley's thesis is that the forefathers of the philosophical tradition, very, very significant pre-Socratics, were living in this world of mystery and spiritual depth, a shamanic world, a world of dreams and visions, in a land ruled over by Hades and Persephone. So, yeah, maybe I can leave the video there. I've got a presentation that I wanted to do on the four elements, which might go into a bit more of the technicalities of the scheme, what we might think about the different elements, because I think there's an intuitive aspect to the elements, like one could think about fire and what it is for quite a long time. It's a very important element for human beings. And same with water. So perhaps I'll do a more like technical or in-depth video. I've got the sketch of a presentation on that topic, which I can put out. But I wanted to give a bit of a reading from the Fragments of Empedocles, something from Kingsley's book, and just suggest this idea, which is really at the core of his book, that the four elements theory is really a double marriage structure, or a double quaternity, is it? I think that's the word Jung uses anyway. Or it's like a double hierogamy, a double marriage between Zeus, air, Hera, earth, Hades, fire, Persephone, water, and that these four elements are constituted by like a double marriage. And connected to that is Empedocles' idea that like the two primal forces are love and hate, basically, and that love is the way in which, I think I gave a bit of he mentions this in the reading I just gave, but like love is the way things harmonize together, like sort of there's a natural affinity between the things, and that's kind of the basis of marriage, is like a harmonic union. So like it's kind of interesting, right, that like these divinities exist in a harmonic union, and it's through that harmonic union that all things are constituted, essentially, in their various forms. So I find that a really exciting and fascinating thought, so I thought I'd share that with you. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to support the channel in any way, I've got a Patreon link somewhere on the channel, and I'll be putting out the video and the elements soon, probably like a more formal presentation on it.